Hello, beautiful moms and entrepreneurs. My name is Charisse Walker, and I'm your host of the Unbreakable Mompreneurs podcast. This is a place where we come together to learn, grow, and inspire. So sit back, relax, and let's get started. Hello, Unbreakable Mompreneurs. Are you struggling? Maybe you're thinking about starting a business or you're not quite sure and you're trying to juggle being a mom, and now you might be scaling your business and you're not quite sure the organizational changes that need to happen. Well, today's your day because Sarena Diamond specializes in all of that. And we were talking a little before this, super excited to talk to her because she has so much knowledge and experience and the same type of perspective that I have. So, Sarena, without further ado, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thanks so much for having me here, Charisse. I really appreciate it. So I am a 30 plus year corporate executive retiree, or escapee, as some people would, recovery. And I went out on my own as a solopreneur about 3.5 years ago, focusing exclusively on organizational change, helping leaders of small and medium-sized business, because I had so much of the corporate experience, but I really focused on small and medium business, helping them to grow and to scale and to create the future that they want to see without it being something that is overwhelming. And so many of my clients these days are women who have jumped into either entrepreneur or small business ownership and really are trying to do everything, which is awesome. They're bringing tremendous skills to the market, but they're struggling to try and grow at the scale, the rate and pace and the scale that they're looking to do. So I'm sometimes never a coach. I'm always a partner, but not somebody that is going to make anybody question what they're doing. It's always going to be the cheering on the sidelines and helping them get it done.
So, do you find that there's more and more women that are entering the entrepreneur workforce?
I really have. I have found more people that are either reaching out to me directly or interacting with me online that are women who've just said, enough already. I'm not feeling fulfilled. My values or my values are not in alignment in the corporate job that I've been setting. I've had a number of people reach out to me and say, tell me how you finally decided to launch. How did you get the bravery to go out on your own after, being very, very tied to a W-2 paycheck, right? And those are really good stories. Those are great questions to be having when, if you've got an idea or you've got a passion for something the world needs, what you need is some other people around you to help you figure out how to turn that into a really, really viable business. But I'm the worst one to say if somebody's on the fence between going back to W-2 or starting your own business. I always say to them, listen, I'm the worst one to talk you into going back to W-2 because it is awesome it's not a freedom thing. It is about choice of who I work with. It is choice of the work that I do and getting to share my successes with other people so that they can inspire their own successes.
Yeah, totally agree with you. And it's interesting because the W-2 gives you that comfort, it gives you the stability. And I think because you were a single mom, and I was a single mom at one point. And I mean, I get that, but I've like doubled, tripled, quadrupled my income. And I'm like, why was that even a thing? Or why was I so afraid? And I think that starting your business, although freedom is not always there, it is something that, actually, that's not true. Is you can set your own schedule. Like my husband right now, he's going to a W-2 job and it's tough. It's tough that he wants to be able to go do things and he's working. And so, I'm like, well, I'll go do it. I can take care of it. I can work later tonight, or I mean, it's flexible, it's movable. And that's something that we don't always do with W-2. So I am too. I don't know if I could ever do that again, to go back to work.
I love that it's flexible. The other thing is, though, one of the things that I recognize is that the kind of professional that I am now is the same kind I was as in corporate, in that I wasn't defined by somebody's 9 to 5 expectations. I love what I do. I loved what I did then. I loved the people that I worked with. And I always worked a lot, but I always had the lack of flexibility. I can't tell you how many volleyball games or hockey tournaments I sat with my laptop in the bleachers because you never knew when something was going to need to be done. And even if it was after hours, I would still take it. This was certainly before the take your device anywhere kind of expectation. But I think that women particularly are exceptionally good at juggling all the things. And I think that when you introduce the ability to say, this is on my own terms, I am going to work at 9 o'clock tonight after the kids are in bed so that I can not miss something, so that I can be there for some of those things, or so that I can just go outside and play with them for a little while today. I, even as my kids have grown to be, as I refer to them lovingly, as kidults, I still will interrupt what I'm doing for something for them. Actually, I'm in their house right now. My two daughters live together, and I'm in their house right now because they're both away, and I'm cat watching. And if I was in a corporate setting, I couldn't really do that. So,
yeah. And I think also maybe the difference is, I mean, I was working 70, 80-hour weeks. Like my sister came to live with me for a while so that she could be like, I'd put my kids to bed, I'd go back to work that was 35 minutes away, and I'd stay there till 4 or 5 in the morning and then come home. But it was a set amount. And yeah, I could bonus, but it was a set amount. Well, if I'm going to work those type of hours, I want to be able to have a non-set amount. And I think that's why, and I'm not working those crazy 70, 80-hour weeks like I was.
and I will say that once I was out of the corporate limitations, I think the limitations, it opened up the idea of something else. Every year that I have been in business for myself, I have made more money than I did as an IBM executive with bonuses and everything. And it's not that I'm charging or working that much more. It's just the fact that it is on my own terms. It is value based. I am always delivering value to my clients that exceeds their expectations, and there isn't anybody else's overhead to cover for that, right? It is my value, my terms. People still tell me I charge way too little, which is fine. That's fine for me. I'm very comfortable from that perspective, but the ability to decide who I work with. I've turned down jobs. It's hard the first year as an entrepreneur. People say you never turn down the first job, like the first year you work for anything. I was very lucky that the first engagement that I had was 11 months long, and it was lovely and challenging and fun, people in a cool industry. But I've turned down jobs since when it was something that was very clearly a or board-based mandate, and the operating team was begrudgingly agreeing to having leadership insights or development. As I refer to that period as, that's like getting a babysitter for teenagers. They know they need you, but they don't want you there. And I don't choose to do that. I will find someone else or the leadership team that says, just make them do it. Like, yeah, no, that's not my style. It's not my culture.
Yeah.
So being able to choose who you work for and when you work is that freedom, but recognizing that the same kind of core value that you had in the way you worked when you worked, if you loved what you were doing, you're going to bring that to your entrepreneurship, and Saturday mornings are a good time to get work done before everybody else gets up, or something along those lines.
I love that you talked about how everyone says you never turn down, like the first year you take everybody, but you set your boundaries. And it's the best feeling, is it not, when you're like, I mean, yeah, it's money, but it's not happy money.
Right.
And you feel
Well,
like you're selling yourself.
you absolutely do. And I had a client that I didn't think was going to be an engagement, an environment that I wanted to work in. The C-suite they were at odds. And it wasn't that I wasn't there to help the C-suite come to terms with each other. So I priced it really high, thinking that they would choose someone else. As a matter of fact, then they ended up choosing me, which was sort of serendipitous in that the team that I was working with was not at odds. They were actually lovely, and the work was really good work, and I did enjoy the project. And at the time, then I was making this premium on it. Whenever I have those kinds of engagements, I take the equivalent of that and put it into something lasting in my house so that I look at it. So a big chunk of the kitchen that we just built a beach house, or almost beach house, and a big chunk of the kitchen design center days were all that client engagement, and I will think about the opportunity to do that. Something lasting, right? Never, people say to me all the time, how do you celebrate your wins? And I'm not one of the pat your back, pat yourself on the back and walk around. But I will say, oh, that job was, $10,000. I'm going to find something lasting in my house. Maybe it's the patio or something that
I
you're
love
going to do that you can't help but be reminded that you earned it. That this is, and the whole, actually, frankly, the entire beach house is earned it from my life. But
that is such a good idea. Uh,
yeah,
I mean, because everyone says reward yourself. So I know people that go out and buy shoes, they go out and buy a purse, they go out and buy, things like that. But you know what? That's a good idea. If your house needs to be redone, part of
pick
it
something.
is for that. And
I'm very high right now on, I probably don't want to promote, but there's a company in Minnesota, I think it's Minnesota, the bicycle glass company, and they make these beautiful light fixtures from recycled glass. They've saved 300,000 pounds of glass from ending up in the ocean or landfills
wow,
or something. And their pieces are beautiful, handmade, and so the light fixtures for our bathroom will come from there. They're on order based on a completion of a client engagement that I was just about completing as I was closing on the house, and said, all right, what's next? And that was it. So every morning, brushing my teeth, I'll get to be reminded of the success that I've created by going out on my own. Interestingly, all of the years of being, a bonus executive, I never used the bonus for something like that. It didn't feel the same to me.
right.
I always paid for camp or
Mhm.
car insurance for once the kids turned teenagers. That was always where the bonus money went, was something that was needed. And this feels like something that's real.
I love that. Okay, so let's talk about business for a minute.
All right.
It's such a good thing to reward yourself and then to be reminded. That's really cool. But with business, like I love organizational change and the culture. So, what do you find companies or organizations are lacking when they're thinking of going from point A to point B? What do you feel like they're lacking that you help with?
The biggest thing they're lacking, the biggest thing they're not lacking is leadership vision, right? Somebody has this great idea and they've thought about it, they figured it out, they've launched it. And then I think they forget to bring people along. And that's one of the reasons why I talk about change management is not, that's a work plan, right? That's a project and a governance. Organizational change management is bringing people with you. It is about building belief in that vision, defining the why, declaring a purpose, and helping people to see themselves in that end result. And then it is about enabling the behaviors and the new changes and new ways of working that you want people to do. That is crucially important, and leaders miss it so often. They just presume that they're very adept, well educated, or well tasked teams will just get it. But enabling those behaviors and making sure that you're supporting those new behaviors, those new changes that you expect people to do is really crucial. And then the last piece is really always about sustaining change. Oftentimes, the leaders are surprised where status quo is resumed because there wasn't a cultural or a mindset shift that would allow that to be supported long term. So those are some of the things that, and I almost always, I wish I could say I get called in when leaders are thinking about the change at the beginning, but it's almost always, we're in the middle of it and it's not going the way we thought it was going to, or it's slow, or we've lost the priority. So I always come in the messy middle, as we always refer to it, and then go back and say, let's talk a little bit about how we set this up, why this was there, what was the alignment between the change and the future, and how were people supposed to see themselves in that vision. The nice part is that it doesn't usually take long to overcome the missteps that happen in the building belief stages. For most of the team, it's almost always harder for the leaders because the leader believes that they explained it well enough and that people get it well enough.
So, what size of business do you usually come in at?
I've worked certainly in corporate, but I love working in the medium-sized business, the 250 to 600 people
Okay.
kind of organization, because they have enough success behind them that they know, and they've got some legs under their walking, but they're not all the way there yet. And they're not already figuring out how do you get to the next really big level. So that's usually the sweet spot. And those are the leaders that they see my background and the kinds of experiences that I have, and they want to glean from some of those.
How did you get into that? I always like the
uh,
origin story.
I had, when I began, well, I started my career at Accenture
Yeah.
and did all kinds of clients there. And and went to Pepsi and loved every bit of all the experiences that I had pre-IBM. I worked at IBM for about 18 years, loved all of that experiences, but the structure of that being what it was. When IBM and Kindle were spinning off, I knew that I really wanted to focus on change. And I found a phenomenal job that I thought was going to be my final career job, focusing just on organizational change and change management. 6 months later, they were out over their skis, as the saying goes, and I found myself with a essentially guilty severance that gave me the financial cushion to be able to figure out what I really wanted to do. And I figured out that I wanted to work for the one person I could always trust. So I went out on my own and reached out to my network, started mostly through talent sourcers, started building my business through project-based work that was there. And then from there, I have now expanded to be doing speaking and really trying to help more leaders with the impact that they could have by educating in mass or larger numbers of people about ways to adopt change and build belief as they're going.
That is so cool. And that was going to be my next question is how do you find your clients? So you're using basically headhunters to find them or not anymore?
There's companies that really do just project-based things. My favorite one right now is Catalent. They have been doing an enormous amount of work where they basically have a workforce of experts, but we're not on payroll, right? They're doing the business development. I say to people all the time, if you don't like math, you're not doing your own taxes. You're hiring an accountant. So if you don't know how to do business development or you're not really good at it, why would you try and build a business on your own? Find your network, find your people. And when you locate these, talent sourcers, that this is all they do. They have relationships with large companies. I've worked in 3 large corporations as a result, as well as some, many mid-sized businesses. But when that's what they do is they cultivate relationships with companies that are looking to solve problems with interim or fractional kinds of resources, not always on my own. Now, I have had 2 clients that found me, one through a referral from a network and one honestly through LinkedIn, right? Reaching out on a LinkedIn basis and saying, I love what you're talking about doing. Can we have a chat? Which I'm obviously super open to that as well. But really it's about not having any one channel being the only channel. It is about, I call it the power of it's reaching out and doing it all, right? And intentionally being multifaceted as opposed to, one straight channel.
I love that you use, as you talk about your network, that it's something that is so important. And I think that people, they're afraid, we were talking about this before, they're afraid to reach out, they're afraid to use their people or to create a network or to get people because they might be shy or introverts or they have trust issues. So how do you help people get over that fear?
Oftentimes I ask them to think about somebody that they enjoyed helping. And they're always like, what do you mean? I said, well, think about somebody in your circles, one of your circles, where they reached out to help or they just needed help. You knew they needed help and you were able to help them. How you felt about doing that. Okay, so then put a pin in how that feels. Now imagine giving that gift to other people. I love being able to help other people, especially women that are starting their entrepreneurial journey. I actually contributed to a book, an anthology called The Unstoppable Woman Entrepreneur, Part 2. I had a chapter, and when the book came out, I bought 100 copies, and people thought it was crazy that I bought copies. You're supposed to promote your own book. But I actually bought them to give away to women who were starting their journey, not because I thought my story was any more special than anybody else's, but there are 19 other stories besides my own. And I kept thinking that somebody was going to find inspiration in that book, in those stories of other women who were willing to be brave enough to say, I have skills, I have talents, I have something the world needs, and I'm willing to go out there and do it. Now I talk to as many women entrepreneurs or starting entrepreneurs to be that want to get on my calendar. I average about 10 virtual coffees a week, and half of those are women that are starting out or that have started out and want to come back and talk a little bit about what they're finding. It is my biggest joy to be able to help other people. And when I can help other people, I often say to those women, think about this, right? You feel receiving help and you feel the relief that you feel. Now imagine being able to give that to someone else. That's a gift. So recognizing the things that you could reach out and have help on. And it can be something so simple as just an email that says, hey, can I ask a favor? Could I just 20 minutes on your calendar. I just would love to run an idea by you. That may be enough spark that gets you going in a direction that you hadn't thought about before.
I love that. That's so good. So good. And that you're giving back. Okay, one last question. We're going to talk about being a mom. You were a single mom, so it's even harder when you're trying to be that C-suite executive. Different question. If you're sitting on a park bench, 19-year-old, and I don't even care, but it's a young mother, first-time mom, she comes and sits next to you. What is one piece of advice that you would give her if you could give her anything about being a mom?
Find your network. Find your people. Do not try and go alone. There's that adage that says when we go alone, we go fast. When we go together, we go far, or something along those lines. But the hardest thing is feeling alone. And because there are days as a single parent, I'd wake up and I'd be like, not again. We're going to do this again today. But when you have other people to lean on, some of my hardest things were, when I think about my history, it was always the days where I didn't reach out for help, where I didn't say, hey, can I ask you to, and it doesn't have to be something tangible. It can just be, can you just listen for 5 minutes? I have a rule with a couple of friends. There are days that I want solutions and there are days that I want support. I'll start the conversation with what it is. I just need some support for a minute. Can you just tell me that my ex-husband's being a jerk? Can you just tell me that my kids are being irrational? Like, that's an important thing. One of the things I think women tend to do, and I think it's why we struggle with all of the internal stresses, that we keep it in and we feel like we're doing it all by ourselves. When I started talking to other women and I was realizing that I was not the only woman who was juggling a C-suite career with 3 kids and all the things, plus I was on the school board in town and I was involved in our community and I was the breadwinner, right? It wasn't like somebody was passing me a child support check. Right? I felt like I had to keep all of that in and don't let anybody know. And it wasn't until I started to open up and say to others, can I just run something by you? Can you just tell me what you think? And there are lots of days I say, listen, don't have thick skin today, so be gentle. That's an okay thing to say. But I would say to that 19-year-old, sitting on a park bench is, who else have you connected with? Go find other single moms, other young moms. It doesn't have to be single. Make sure that wherever it is that you feel connected, find something there. And those people, I have a group of women friends that I have had for 30 years. Wow. We met in daycare. We're all different professions. Still, we're in 4 different, 25 of those 30 years. We went out to dinner about once a month. We joke about the fact that we went through potty training and dating, marriages, like the whole bit. And those are the kinds of relationships that allow you to survive it all. And more than that, just to thrive in all the things that you've got ahead of you.
I love that. And it is important. Like when I was leaving the ex, and I had to reach out because I had to have, this kid didn't go to school till this time. This kid didn't go to school at all. This one didn't. And I did. I finally had to ask people, hey, would you mind helping? Can you watch him here? Can you watch him there? And they did a tremendous service. I offered to pay them. They wouldn't let me, which was a huge help because, again, wasn't getting child support at all. I don't know what I would have done without those people. It was an amazing thing that they did for me.
And then you feel that, right? The bond that you have, what you've demonstrated to your children is that it does take a village, and you raise kids together. It's so important and it's so valuable. But looking at the other end, you're like, I don't know how I would have gotten through. Interestingly, they may or may not recognize just how impactful they were, but they certainly felt good about doing it.
No, that's true. Well, Sarena, if our listeners wanted to find you, how would they do that?
The easiest way actually is on LinkedIn, because if you spell my name right, the way my mom intended, Sarena with Sarena Diamond, I am the only Sarena Diamond on LinkedIn. Interestingly, right? I've discovered that's the easiest way. I have a website, I have an email address, but the fastest way is really on LinkedIn.
Well, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
And Unbreakable Moms, find your network. That's kind of the key. And make sure that don't do it alone. You don't have to, and it's not fun. So find your network and go out and make it a great day. Beautiful moms, remember, you are unbreakable. Keep illuminating the world with your strength, pursuing your dreams, and reveling in the splendor of motherhood. This is Charisse Walker, bidding you farewell for now. Stay tuned for more empowering conversations on the next episode of the Unbreakable Mompreneurs podcast. Until then, keep shining bright. Signing off with love, Charisse Walker.